Well, the conversation continues. Did he jump or was he pushed? Ngilari, now Adamawa Governor. Well, Liborous Oshomah joins us now, also a legal practitioner, to give his thoughts to this matter. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you.
What do you think?
Really, if you look at this matter, you would say it's like 1 plus 3 or 2 plus 2 or 3 plus 1, as the case may be. While some have argued that technically speaking, the deputy did actually, resign because it was his intention to resign. He did actually, wrote a letter. Others have argued that writing a letter is not enough. That letter, by virtue of Section 306, must be transmitted to the person whom is addressed to before it can become effective. And so that was the position of the court. And to that extent that, look, you did not properly resign. And then I would toe the line of the court also, because it is what the court say the law is, that the law is. Because if you also look at these whole issues, I've had cause to, listen to the argument of the counsel that was here before me. And then the question you would ask, if you intend to resign, you write a resignation letter, and then rather than give the resignation letter to your boss, you give the resignation letter to your cook. Will your cook now say, because, I have received the resignation letter, so by that implication you have resigned? That's what the court is simply saying. That if the law says the letter must be addressed to your boss, which the lawyer also admitted, the governor, and as at the time that letter was collected, mind you, I choose to use my word, collected by the speaker, the governor Nyako was still the governor of Adamawa State at that time. And so, if the letter is not addressed to you, you cannot act on it.
They said the governor was nowhere to be found.
Even if the governor, he admitted also that even if the governor was nowhere to be found, that he ought to have looked for the governor. And so, it's the same vein, because writing the letter and transmitting the letter to the governor alone automatically does not mean resignation. The governor will still have to accept your resignation. So it doesn't even end there. There is still a process. And so, if a letter is not addressed to you, you don't have the power to act on that letter. You cannot act on the letter on the pretense that, well, since the governor is nowhere to be found, he was still the governor as at that time. Not that the governor is incapacitated. The House of Assembly had not declared the governor incapacitated as at the time they acted on that letter.
But again, since he wasn't found and he knows full well that the provisions of the Constitution doesn't allow him to give that letter to the speaker, why didn't he take charge and wait till the governor resurfaced then?
Politics is, the intrigues of politics is very, very funny here in this country. And then we cannot also, the courts cannot close its eyes to the fact of the case. The matters that transpired up to the collection of the resignation letter. So the court cannot just look strictly at a resignation letter. There are issues that transpired before that resignation letter was acted upon. And so, if as at the time there was a governor, whether the governor was in Abuja or whether he was on his way to Abuja and nobody could locate him, the deputy governor at that time was in charge or was supposed to be in charge. And if the governor did not hand over power to the deputy governor, you cannot say the deputy governor was in charge. And so if the deputy governor intended to resign, the law says he must address a resignation letter to the governor. And so since the governor was not on ground to act upon that letter, the Speaker of the House of Assembly had no power. It's like, please, hold this letter for the governor.
Oh, the Speaker?
Yes. And so, instead of you now to take the letter and hand it over to the governor or wait for the governor to come, but if you now decided to act upon that letter first before impeaching the governor. Do you understand now? Because you know fully well that the moment you go ahead to impeach the governor automatically what you will now need to do will be to swear in the deputy.
Which wasn't done.
Which wasn't done. Irrespective of the fact that you have a letter, a resignation letter from the deputy meant for the governor. The governor is still in office. What he should have done would have been impeach the governor, swear in the deputy. If you now want to say, well, now you are the governor, you want to do me a letter as the speaker, because the governor, if the governor wants to resign, he would do a letter to the speaker.
Okay, the other angle is this. If you say that the deputy governor gave the letter to the speaker saying, hold this letter for the governor.
I'm telling you that, assuming, yes.
If that were the case, the letter would then have been addressed to the governor.
To the governor.
But in this case, it was addressed to the speaker. Wasn't it what they said? His argument.
The argument that the letter was also, mind you, like I said, the court cannot close its eyes to the facts that transpired. Also, it was reported that the speaker drove to the deputy governor's house to collect a resignation letter from him.
So what does that imply?
Also, that's politics at play. And so there are a lot of things that probably would have transpired in the room before the before the resignation letter was addressed to a man who had no power to collect such letter. So, Chamberlain, in the same vein, if I am a boss in an organization, let's say I'm a director in an organization, and the only person that can accept my resignation letter is my chairman, and my cook now comes and say, Oga, address a resignation letter to me, or I say, okay, I address a resignation letter to a cook, while there is still a chairman in place in that parastatal, that letter, that resignation letter, at best would be regarded as a paper tiger. It has no effect. It's a mere piece of paper.
But again, if you look at it, these are public officers, and the Constitution is a public document for all Nigerians. Have you bothered to find out why that letter was tagged secret?
I don't need to, because you find out that in government...
Doesn't that tell you that there's something really untoward and fishy about it all? Because the resignation letter of a public officer, be you a president or a governor, shouldn't be
Suleiman,
secret.
Unfortunately, in Nigeria here, let me give you an instance. Do you know if you do a letter now to invite the director SSS to your program, and they are responding that, okay, director will appear on the program at so and so time, they will tag the letter secret. Because we run government, as a nocturnal thing here. Everything in government is tagged secret. And so, but if you also want to, the people that tag this secret might even stretch that beyond them, the ordinary, to say, well, if I wanted to resign, it should be a public document for everybody to see. It was tagged secret because it was not done properly. But strictly, what the court concerns itself with is what is the provision of the Constitution as regards resignation. How should a deputy governor resign? Because if you say that, well, his intention is to resign, and since he has done a letter, what it means is that tomorrow anybody can walk up to a governor and say, and demand a resignation letter, and once the governor, writes a resignation letter and transmits to a director, the director acts upon it and just come to public address, a press interview, and say, well, I received a letter of resignation from the governor, and by that effect, the governor has resigned. What you're trying to do is to create chaos. So anybody can act on resignation letters. Okay,
I didn't even see any word of duress coming into the question here. It means they didn't even cite it. It was not the case. It would have been a different matter entirely.
Yes, you don't need to cite duress in this case because it is obvious. The argument is straightforward and simple. By virtue of Section 306, the person that ought to receive my resignation letter is my boss. And as at the time I was deemed to have resigned, my boss was still in office. I did not address a letter to him. If I did, he should produce that letter. Any other letter, as far as I'm concerned, It's a paper tiger.
But Mr.
It's a mere piece of paper.
Let's go to Mr. Akiri's argument. He wants us to investigate the intention of that particular act.
The intention of the act, you can't investigate because the court had ruled on it. And also, like
prior
I said,
to the rule,
yes.
you know, to the
like I
outcome
said
of, that,
also,
of the court.
Why?
No, he wanted the court. He was saying that the court should have actually explored that avenue. That is why he's saying that by the time we go
Then
for an appeal, that is one area that
when
they
you
should
now
look
begin
into.
to look at the intention, that's where you now begin to ask the question, why will a speaker drive to the house of a deputy governor to collect a resignation letter? Would it not have been that the deputy governor would drive to the office of the speaker to submit a resignation letter if that is the case? You know, when you begin to look at all of this intention, you will be reading into it morals, and then questions that what transpired in the comfort of wherever they were. And then also it will now be the speaker's word against the governor's words, the deputy governor's words. But what the court is strictly looking at is, you said there is a letter addressed to you. At what time was the governor impeached? If this letter was addressed to you and marked received at 8 a.m. and acted upon at 9 a.m., but the governor was impeached at 10 a.m., basically what it means is that as at the time you took that step to act on that letter, you have no power to do so. That's simply what the court has said. So as at the time you took that step, you have no power to do so. And the governor did not delegate that power to you. And so you cannot, you know, empower yourself, or you cannot take such steps. That's as simple as ABC. But the politics behind it, I don't want to go into that one.